Two. Hey, there we are. All right. We are finally up and running. Welcome to this is the third lesson, right? We've done this 3 times now?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. But the second one that we've recorded. First one that we recorded, which I titled LAMP.js Sucks, or I guess just JS Sucks. This one, I'm titled JS Really Sucks, because we're actually going to do JavaScript. Last time we didn't really do anything, right? So let me actually open up the actual project that we're on, because I have so many freaking projects. Okay. All right. So I heard you guys finished your little project, right?
Good.
Yep.
And that would be, let me actually open up. Let me open up and pull those changes. Oy. Okay, so lamp, and I will SVN up and see what we get. I get updated. So I have a conflict with gens. But that,
No.
yeah, well, that's fine. I didn't really do anything with gens. But this is a great thing to just start off, because I know you guys kind of sound like you had a bit of a conflict issue when you were both working on the index.php.
Yeah.
Okay. And you figured out how to resolve that, but did you figure out how to see what the issue was?
Uh,
I don't know.
Okay. So if you look at the bottom right here, we actually have some. Can you guys see that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's some options. We can just postpone it. We can show the diff or show the difference. We can edit the file. We can merge them, which is not a good idea when you don't know what the issue is. You can accept I can accept my stuff or their stuff, or S for show all options.
what
So
does that mean? Like my stuff or their stuff? Like
so
one
I
overwrites the other?
pretty much.
Oh.
It's like, oh, my stuff's good, so forget their stuff, or their stuff's good. Now, in this case, I'm probably going to do their stuff, because Jen, you're the one that did work, and I probably changed like one file on one line that created the conflict. But I'm going to do a df for show difference. And what do we have here? We have, so this is the section right here. So mine says that I have this header, and I remember, I changed the ampersand.
Uh-huh.
And because I had that change, it looks like maybe you just
Oh,
dropped
I
the
just
header.
stopped wrapping the H1 inside header tags.
So my file says, hey, there's header stuff here, and because I've added it, and I was out of sync compared to what you committed, so I'm just going to accept your changes. If I did my changes, it would just insert this back, but I'm just going to do a th for yours, and let's see. Conflict's already resolved. We'll do an SVN status, and I have my cheat sheet. What did I do to cheat sheet? Let's see. So I can run an SVN diff, which you can do based on any revision, but if you just do an SVN diff, this shows what the difference between my working file and what is already in the repo. So if I do this, oh, it says I had committed the VI, but I then ended up changing it to VI editor. So that's the diff. I'm going to go ahead and just commit that. And say text edit. Okay. So it looks like I'm all up to date except for my Scotty file, which I think is absolutely nothing. If I do cat Scotty, I can just see, yeah, this is just an empty thing with the button exercise that we had earlier. So my site is all up to date with your code. So let's check it out. So how do I lamp? Ooh, look at that. Does this? Oh, it's not responsive. You guys didn't figure out response. Oh no. I'm really. I had you put it just below the fold, didn't you? So I wouldn't see it.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. So read on to learn more about basic LAMP programming. And I'm assuming that we still have similar pages. Look at those two dweebs. This is really Martin Freeman is really the one that keeps that show alive. Okay, so then what is LAMP? Okay, looks good. Hold on, I'm gonna sneeze. Now it's stuck. Okay, jeez Louise. Really?
You're welcome.
Wow.
I found it like that. I didn't make it.
Are you seriously? You found that?
Uh-huh.
It's Scott on it?
That's one of his middle names on the show.
One of his middle names.
Uh-huh.
Like one of Sherlock's middle names, or one
Yeah,
of
William Sherlock Scott Holmes or something.
Oh, that's right.
You're dropping a
know if
bit of
that's why it's
knowledge
there.
there. Jeez Louise. We want a strawberry. Nice. I'm gonna have to just read through all of this. I feel like is this just all Holy Grail stuff?
Yeah, I found a generator.
Nice. This is well now I want to watch Holy Grail and Rave Dog. I
What?
saw I had by the way I just saw this little tip and I knew that it was Rave. Oh, we got a GIF in here too. Jeez Louise, guys. Well, I guess you already have a GIF for Rave Dog. How did you pull off Rave Dog? Okay, so we have 4 interesting ones. So, here's a suggestion that you're more than welcome to try, but if you have a div that had the same class, you can assign the background all of the same so that you wouldn't have to put the URL all the times. You can just say
like tile the background inside the div.
exactly. Well, you can do 4 different divs and have the same class. So let's say we write it, and I'll just write some notes real quick. Okay, but let's say you have what am I doing this here? I have Aptana. I'm just going to do it Aptana. Okay, so we'll open up Scotty because I'm probably never going to even use this. I'm going to keep Rave Dog just on the screen. Something happened with my Aptana, and I fucking am so pissed off. I have this stupid gap, and I don't know what happened. I feel like I have to uninstall the whole program. Anyways, so we have our div, right? And you can just say Rave Dog or whatever. And let's say we have a class of Rave Dog. Then we have a Rave Left or something. I don't know. It's not a very good name. But if we have a Rave Right and a Rave Left, the dog is so distracting. Here, let's pull. Okay, so I can't wait until we can get into a regular framework, but we're still a ways away from that. So Rave Dog, Rave Dog, Rave Dog, Rave Dog. Let's go ahead and put in a style tag, and we'll just throw in some styles. So Rave Dog, right? That's the class that all of these share. So you can just say background. This auto completes for me. Come on.
Wait, why isn't the div class Rave Dog like in the wait, surround never mind. They're 4 separate divs.
They're 4 separate divs that will share the same class.
Oh, okay.
So I'm probably not doing this right. It's bad. I'm not very good at CSS off the top of my head because I'm not a front-end developer. So let's see what this does. So we do that, and background image doesn't do shit. Let's do background. I'll wrap a URL around this. Let's see what that does.
Oh, I think you do have to have it.
There we go.
Yeah. Oh.
So we have a Rave Dog. Let's add a. You had a width and a height of what? Too many URLs. Okay, Rave Dog. We'll inspect that element, and 500 by 344. And I won't spend too long on this, by the way. I just kind of want to get you all thinking in a sense of, how can we reuse this code? How can we make the most out of the lines that we're using? Okay, so they're all sharing Rave Dog, and let's do a main div to contain the rave. So
Contain
the rave.
Here, I'll say that. Contain the rave. Okay, so this is our ID, and what is an ID compared to a class?
ID can only be used once.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, nice. So we're just going to set a width of, if I can spell width, there you go, of 1,000. Since we wanted a 2x2 type of thing, this probably isn't going to do much.
Oh, you didn't wrap the div.
I didn't wrap the div.
No.
I didn't wrap the div. Nice catch.
Aha.
But I still don't think it's going to do anything.
Oh, bummer.
See, because it can still stack. It's...
Oh, you need... I don't know.
Do you need like top left and bottom left or something?
Nope.
You need a height? No, that doesn't make any sense.
Nope. All we need...
Oh, float.
I mean,
Float. And I didn't even need a float right. I should be able to just do this. Boop. Right.
Boom.
So I don't need these extra classes, and it's just a matter of floating it. So we haven't really gotten into floats, but the kind of really basic version of that, or the basic explanation, is if I tell a group to float left per se, it's really distracting talking and watching him. If I want them to all float left, they'll start stacking next to each other, left, 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 until they hit the end of the container of their parent, and then it makes a new row. So essentially what happened was they started to go, okay, here's the first one, here's the second one, and here's the end of the parent. Okay, I'm going to stack on the bottom and go with the first one, or this is the third one now, and fourth one. So if I made it 1,500, so to speak, there's going to be 3. So it's basically, it'll just keep stacking left, left, left until it hits the end of its parent. Or even if it was like 1,600, anything below 2,000, with the math, 500 pixels by 4, if it was 1999, it would still be this. it would still look like this, 1999. Much like how Rave Dog is relevant, 1999. But if I went to 2000, or here, I'll show you. We can do it on the fly instead. Okay. So here's contain the rave. As soon as I hit 2000, look, they're all next to each other.
Oh.
One below, and here I will. As soon as we hit, oh, it's going to take forever. As soon as we hit 1500, then it goes back to 2. So right over, it'll fit, and then it's contained. So something to think about when you're floating. And the way that the floats work, per se. Let me close some things down. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I put the recording screen on my other monitor, so it was Rave Dog on both screens, and I think it went a little crazy. Anyways, so here I'll show you also kind of the order on how floats work, and we'll so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to change the color to white, which is FFF, just so we can see. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, and if I were to change the order to float right, what do you think the order will be?
1, 2, 3.
Like, do you think the order will stay this? Will it be 1, 2, 3, 4? Will it be 1, 2, 3, 4? What do you think? Well, let's find out.
I don't know.
So let's just do this, and that's how it is.
Oh,
That's an interesting result.
that's weird.
Yeah. Now the reason is because it's 19. If we switched it to 15, it'll look normal. It's because it went to all the way at the end of this container, which was 1999, and then stacked everything. So if we went and knocked it down to 15, then it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. So it just takes, if it's right, the first one's going to lead, and then still keep stacking, nudging each other next on the right side until it runs out of space, and then it goes into the left, or it goes back into the next line. So
Alright.
that's kind of like the really basic version of floats. We can kind of get into really what it means on the space of the screen, but I think that's enough to actually get you going on floating. So,
I'll
and
redo my floaty dogs.
what'd you say?
I'll redo my floaty dogs later.
Okay. And also, so I had text here. If I got rid of text, something might actually happen. So if I do this, oh, nothing happened. Trying to think of the reason. Sometimes there's a case, and it's probably because I set a actual width and height of this. If I didn't, I don't think that these would show up at all. Yeah.
Oh.
So, but if I put a 1, 2, oh, shit, 4. So there's tiny little raves going in here.
Ribs.
Tiny raves.
Tiny raves.
Ribs.
So we'll get back Rave Dog, and if I want to get rid of this text, Well, one, we just proved that we can get rid of it and there's no issue. But you can always change. There's a thing called text align, or I'm sorry, text indent, where you can tell it to just indent the text as much as you want. You can do like negative 2,000 pixels, so it'll shift all of this text negative 2,000 and make it go off the screen. So there you go. Now it's gone with that negative 2,000, or you can even do positive 2,000. It's just a little trick. There's a lot of little tricks that you'll discover when going through CSS, because honestly, there's stuff that I don't even understand on how people use it. But I'm going to leave that to you guys figuring that on your own. Okay, so let's make a calculator. That is our JS Really Sucks project tonight.
Oh.
We're going to make a functioning calculator.
Dear Lord.
Yep.
Terrible.
And I can actually, I'm going to end up using this code anyways. So don't stress. I'm going to lead most of this. This is more of an exercise in just kind of learn how to do it. So hopefully I can kind of make a really rough looking calculator in the next few minutes. Okay, so we're gonna, I don't want RaveDog anymore, and we'll say calc. So what do we need for a calculator? We need 9 buttons, right? We need an add.
Don't we need 10 buttons?
Jeez Louise. We do need 10 buttons.
I know my maths, kind of.
Good job. And we'll say, why don't we make 400 pixels? That's not what I wanted. Okay. And we'll say number is, and again, I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so I'd rather make it function and there, and I'm not going to really care if it is pretty or not. But let's actually make this divisible by 3, because, wait, we do, it's 4 buttons on a calculator, and the 0 is huge, right? 4 buttons are crossed, so we actually need like a plus sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say a minus, and what does a calculator look like?
Divided the division button and the times button.
Yeah, so we have these 3, then we have a dot. We're not going to worry about decimals tonight. So we have, all in all, 12, 16 buttons, and we're going to make the 0 huge, so we'll really have 15 buttons. Or we should make the equals huge, I think, right?
Yeah.
So we have, looks like we have not enough yet. So we'll do and multiplication, or we can make an X for that. And instead of number, why don't we do button? Okay, and we'll make this, we'll make 0, and we'll make a big button. Okay, and so 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do, let's actually switch up this order so that 9's first, and 6,
How are you moving everything like that so quickly?
Magic.
I figured.
So here's a trick, and I don't know if I've showed this to you, but I feel like I've maybe mentioned it. So with Aptana, you can configure other editors to do this, but this is a default thing for Aptana, and one of the reasons why I like it so much is the trying to think on the Mac, it's Command, I think. Yeah, Command. If you hold Command where the cursor is, so my cursor is on Hello World, hold down the Command. Oh, that didn't do it. Hold on. Did I just lose all my stuff? There we go. So Option. I apologize. Option. So hold Option, and you can move that up and down all you want. If you do Option Command where the cursor is, it duplicates the line. And then go back to Option, you can just move that around. And it also applies to blocks of code. So I selected this whole thing. I can do Option Command and just a down arrow or up arrow, and it'll automatically go. I can also just move a chunk of code like this. So it's very, very useful, and one of my favorite things in Aptana. Sometimes the simple stuff is just amazing.
Yeah.
So we've got negative is with the 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got the multiplication with the 6. We'll do division at the top, and we'll do add and big button for equals, and let's make all the buttons, make button width, and we'll make let's see, actually make it 450, and we'll make all the buttons 150. So let's see how that goes. I didn't do shit. Why? Oh, and flipped right. There we go. It's starting. So, oh, I'm dumb. It's not a third of it. It is in fourths. So let's get back to 400 and there, and we'll make the width or the height of this 50 pixels. And okay, starting to possibly look like a thing. But these divs should really be buttons. So here's another shortcut in Aptana. If you hold Command K on a Mac or Control K on a Windows machine, and you can jump to the highlighted thing. So you can, you know how I'm just jumping to the divs? If you do Shift and the same command, you can jump up. So I've just copied button, and now I'm just gonna very quickly change all these to buttons. I'm gonna get rid of this random button because I don't give a crap about that one. And okay, starting to look
magic
like something. So let's do something with our big button, and we'll make that one 200 pixels. So width 200 px. Okay, so here's something that, and if you see, okay, now it's 200, but I kind of just would like to make sure it shares all the other stuff that I'm going to set for these buttons. Like, I want them to be the same height. I want this to float right instead. Now you can have in CSS, and you may have already discovered this, but you can have certain styles apply to multiple classes. So I can really just take big button, and you just add it with a comma. You can move these two down, and now it's going to apply to both. So how the rule goes is for the big button, I'm setting it to a width of 200 pixels. For all the regular buttons, I'm setting them to a width of 100 pixels. But I want for both the regular buttons and the big buttons to share height of 50 pixels, and I want them to all to float right. So instead of having to duplicate this code here, when they share really the same stuff, I can use this syntax here and have them share the same thing at the same time. And that way, if I ever wanted to change it, like let's say I wanted the height to be 75, it's going to apply to both classes, like that. So, yeah, and let me go ahead and switch that back. I'll do 60 pixels, and maybe a background. If I can do background color of, I don't know, red. Should I do red? Let's do red. I think this is red. I'm probably wrong though. Let's see. It's green.
No!
What's red?
The first one, F00.
Oh, in my face. There you go. And the inspector on Chrome is really nice because you can just kind of change it on the fly. I'm going to actually keep it to blue. I'm going to grab that hex code and just throw it in here. And then maybe I'll... Now, honestly, this is kind of ugly, but I'm trying to prove a point. So have you guys seen pseudostates yet in your discovery?
What?
So this is, well, think of like this is how a button normally is. Like this is how you call it. But there are certain pseudo states, like when a cursor is hovering over something, that you can call like, oh, instead of when I hover over it, I want the cursor to change, and I want it to be the pointer finger, and I also want the background to change a little as well. No, go ahead. What's up?
Is that the same as, like, I set some of my links somewhere on one of my pages to have a different hover state? Is that a pseudo thing then?
Yep. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, they both use the same thing. And you can really do it with just about anything. Like you can do it on divs. It doesn't have to be on a link or a button or anything like that. So I'm going to change this, and I want the cursor to be a pointer. So now, if I go here, let me get rid of this. I can look at that.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I'm forgetting a couple other things that a calculator needs. We need a text box that actually shows what it is. So I'm gonna give this an ID of calc value, and its current value is just 0. This can be a div, but I feel like doing an input. So type of text, and here we go. let's go ahead and make this, I'm going to do calc value. I'm going to give this a 100%. So there's many different ways you can set widths, but one that you'll notice a good amount is percentage if you're going to do responsive, because it's easier to say, okay, I want to do like 30% of the screen as opposed to 300, because that could change on any device. So, and why don't I give this height of 50 pixels and a little bit of a margin on only the top and bottom. So if you remember, the syntax of I want margin on the top and bottom, but not on the right or left. What's the syntax for me to do that shorthand?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure. So let's say I want a margin at the top and bottom, so I want space in between this input, but I don't want any space on the right or left, since it aligns perfectly with all the stuff. So how would I do that? How would I say I want to set a 15 pixel margin on the top and bottom, but not on the right or left?
Oh, just 15 px and 0 px.
Nice. So that is correct.
Yay!
Yay!
And
Never eat soggy waffles.
what? Yeah, that's right. Never eat soggy waffles. And I did put that on the cheat sheet, by the way. The never eat soggy waffles. If you saw.
Been immortalized.
Yeah. I'm gonna do text align right and see what that does, because on calculators, it's got to be on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want a font size to be a lot more than what that is. Let's see if 15 does it. And that doesn't really do it enough. So let's see. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
So let's do 24, but I think we should do it for all of our numbers as well. So now that we know how to share similar sizes, we can do for calc value and for buttons, I want to do a font size of 24, and now we're good.
So you can, even between classes and IDs, you can do that as well?
You betcha. Yeah. And the reason being, it's not so much this belongs to a class or an ID. It's more just saying this is a certain value set that I want to assign to all these things. So this is really kind of where the power is, and I'm just flagging that it needs to belong to all of these particular things.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, I think, yeah, without going deeper into CSS, because we still got a lot to do, and it's 9:51. Okay, so we have this thing, and when I click on it, it doesn't do shit. All right, but we're getting started. I'm going to also change this to math is fun. Just to get that going. Okay, so what are the things that a calculator needs to do? We need it to add. We need it to subtract, to multiply, and divide, as well as it needs to actually do the calculations right? So there's going to be actions on all of this, but calculations. Is that how you spell calculations?
Looks like it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to do this all in JavaScript. Okay. So and I'm going to break this down kind of how I program, because for me it's better to pick out very specific things that I need to do. So in this application, and why don't we actually just make this smaller and bring back up this guy. So the actions that need to happen is, when I click a button, value needs to get stored, right? So when I click 7, I need to store 7. It needs to do something when I click 7.
Right.
Which you can say is like the current value. So right now current value is 0. When I click a button, let's say i.e. 7, current value is kind of 7. I mean, I'm just saying, hey, when I click 7, the current value should be 7. And when I say, okay, next, either I'm going to click a 4. So this is another scenario. Button value needs to get, we'll say, concatenated. Here. Button concat current value. So let me I'm going to show you what concatenating means, or what it is. But you guys have never heard this term before, or you have?
Nope.
Okay. So what concatenating is, it's easier to kind of break down into a string, which in JavaScript we have int values, we have float values, we have strings, and we have Boolean values. There's a lot more, but these are some really basic ones that you'll see. So an int might be 7, and a float might be a 7.12. A string is like this, and a Boolean is your true or false. Okay, so an int, right? We're clicking on this, and we want to store an int as 74. But what happened, when we click this, it needs to store an int of 7, right? But the next thing is, if I click 4, it's not going to add 7 plus 4 because I haven't done 7 plus 4. I want to say 74. So what that means is I want to merge the two together, and that is concatenating. And I can explain more in strings. So I can't really add a word to a word. Like, it's not going to be 7 plus 4 equals 11. It would end up being, if I did this syntax in JavaScript, it would actually say, it would say 7, 4. So concatenation is it will just merge the two together, essentially. And it's kind of like what we need for the current value, because I want to keep the 7, but I just want to tack on a 4 when I click another one. So that's another thing that this needs to get done. And stop me if you need more explanation. I know I'm kind of hitting a lot of key points right now, and sometimes they deserve a little bit more focus. So, but let me take a swig and let you absorb that. How loud was that, by the way? Was that loud?
Sounded quite swishy.
Quite swishy? Okay. Wish I had a beer right now. Sounds awesome. That's how we should teach this class.
Next class.
Next class. Okay. So what's next? When I click an add button, it needs to, I need to prepare for the next number. So no longer, like when I click add, no longer am I adding these two together as one number. I'm now saying, okay, hold this number and get ready for the next number, because I'm going to basically do what that last command was. Or so after I click that, when I click that plus, the next number, I need to be able to add it, right? Or let's see how a calculator really works. It needs to, let's say, I click 74, then I click plus, and then what if I did 75? It's not going to add that first number and forget about it. I want to store the next set. So it's really only until I hit equals am I doing any addition, right?
Right.
Or if I hit this, if I hit any one of these, then essentially on any command button, which is I'm going to consider any of these, is I have to do the last command before I accept any more, right? So do the last command and then store the current value. So before we get into any more things that this needs to do, now at least we have a couple specific things to start doing. So my first one is I need to just make sure the current value right now is 0. So why don't I write in some script tags. You know what? I'm not going to write in script tags here. We're going to do JavaScript right. So I'm going to make a calc.js, and all I need to do is script. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've done this, but that should work. And I'm going to say language is text. No, it's JavaScript. Is that right? Let's see. If I were to open that bad boy up, come on. Okay, and I'll do console.log, and we'll just say hello world. This is another thing that I'll do occasionally is before wasting any time programming, I need to make sure that it hooked up right, you know? So, and looks like it did. I loaded the page and it says hello world. So looks like the JavaScript's hooked up, and I'm going to say current. So how to declare a variable in JavaScript. So this is just a piece of data that I'm storing as a variable, and that works for generally all programming languages. So, or let me say actually all programming languages. Every programming language will have a variable that you can store different types of data, much like the list that we have here is you can have an int variable, you can have a float variable, you can have strings or booleans. Now the thing about JavaScript is it's a very loose language. So sometimes there's languages that are very strict, that you have to say this variable is going to be an int, and it can't be anything else. But for JavaScript, I can say, I will say, oh, that's a bad one. Test var. This one is, right now, it's a string, but 2 lines from now, I can really just say, now it's going to be an int. And JavaScript's totally cool with that. Some other languages will bitch about it and say, yeah, you're a shitty programmer. You're not allowed to turn that string into an int. And frankly, I like those languages more because you know what to expect. When I'm working with a variable, I know that if it was declared as this certain thing, it's going to be this certain thing. But JavaScript is a very loose language, or a weak typed language. Strong typed languages could be like Java, C, Swift is one of my new ones that's very strict, and that's iOS's native language now. So, anyways, we will store a current value of 0. Okay, and we'll have a function of equals just to have that going. So in JavaScript or any language, so you have your variables and you have your functions. Now, a function is awesome because it is a piece of code that I can call as much as I want. If there's like one job, like for instance equals, if this is just a matter of calculating things, then I can call it as much as I want, and I can reuse this method or this function. Sorry, methods are in classes in PHP, but they're generally the same. But functions are super powerful in the sense of, I have this tiny little job that I need to do over and over again. Let me make a function and keep calling that function. As opposed to, I need to, let's say, do that alert all the time. But let's say every alert I want to print out the current value. But every time that alert happens, I want it to increment 1 time. So instead of having to do, like, let's say, ++ is shorthand to increment, so current value increment, which, let's say, should say 1, and if I wanted to do this again and again and again, this one will freak out, so watch out. It will send over, I didn't save it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's all this wasted lines of code to do all this thing another time. So really, if I wanted to do this, but then call in equals all the time. Now this is a bad example because this is only 2 lines of code, but imagine something that needed 50 lines of code, and I didn't want to have to write it so many times. So you can just do equals, and it'll keep running it. And that's how a function can work, in the sense of, I'm just going to reuse this block of code over and over again and just be able to call it super easy. So let's get rid of equals. Okay. So I want equals to fire off when I'm on this equal sign. So why don't I go off and I'll just say on click, which we covered, and you guys did it with your exercise last week. I'm going to say equals. So, and let me just keep that going, just to prove, like, hey, I can call this function as much as I want there, and have it do that same job of just incrementing that value. So, There's one. And on these, I'm going to say, I'm going to do, let's say, selected number. So this is a function I will make, and I'm going to pass in the selected number as 9. And I'll do the same thing for all the other numbers so that I can run the same function but pass in a different number each time so that I can reuse the code and just treat that number that I'm passing in as a variable. So I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. So, and let me know if you have any questions, please. That's a minus, so why don't I actually give this a minus for now. Or that actually isn't a very good name. So subtract is the action. Like, a function does something, so it's nice to give it more of a verb name.
Do you have to do that for the multiply and plus?
For the what?
Oh, never mind. It was just lagging.
Oh, okay. There we go. I'll click multiply. Yeah, you can name your function whatever you want, but generally it is good practice because it makes more sense of, instead of minus function, I'm subtracting, because that's the action that I'm selecting. Like, I want to subtract the current value from what has been selected, type of thing. So, let's say add. And did we lose divide? No, it's up here. Okay. Divide. Okay, now we may not cover all of these functions, but ideally if we can get one of them going, then most of our job's done. Because really, if, going back to our notes, if we can, when I click this number and store a certain number, if I click another number after that and then concatenate the numbers together to make a much larger number, and then when I click a command button, it then prepares for the next number. So it will store this and then get ready for a totally new number. And at the end, when I click equals, it will equals, it will add two numbers together. So that's really the majority of the, majority of the application. And once we can get that main job going, it'll be easier to tweak it for the minus, because really, instead of adding the two, I'm just going to subtract the two. Multiplication, same goes. We'll just, if we added another layer of, oh, I want to be able, after I click add and then another number, instead of setting equals, I want to add the number that I just made and do all that. Like, we can always iterate on top of it and make it more complex. But I think our goal tonight, maybe in the next 20-ish minutes, is see if we can get two numbers to add together. So we made one number of selected number, I think is the function that we made. But for each of these, I'm actually passing in an argument. And let me update these. So inside a method, or inside a function, you can pass in variables. You can pass in as many as you want, which is useful when you're exchanging information. So because sometimes a function needs to have that number or that variable. So I'm passing in one argument, but I can do as many as I want. So like test, and I can pass in a string there and things like that. I can just keep going and then separate my arguments by a comma. So how you can call that is just like the syntax is here. So we have in here, I'm actually gonna, come on. Let me do a split view, you jerk. I don't know what is going on with my Aptana lately. There we go. So if we have here, we see it's really, really similar except this 9. We can just say num. And just to confirm that that works, it's nice to do a little test of num. So I'm going to run an alert with the number that I'm passing. So hopefully this is 8. Cool. This should be 1. This should be 9. So I'm just running that function and passing in information for each button. And I'm using it in an alert. But what's a good way that we can do this now? Well, I will change this to, let's just say current value equals num. So now if I click 7, the current value is going to be 7 instead of 0. And I'm going to make a more of a display function. So display value. And whenever I call this, the goal will be that the value of this input that I made, so calc value, let's say document get element by ID. This is kind of old school JavaScript, because if we had jQuery going, then I would just use jQuery, but I don't. So we'll say current value, and let's see what happens. So you can run functions inside of functions. So like every time I click this, I also want to display the value. So I could just say this display value. And let's see what that does. Like, I didn't do anything. So get, there's an error here. And it's probably because I'm calling value. I feel I'm probably just going to have to do jQuery. Let's see, W3 schools, jQuery. Again, probably the greatest site on the entire internet for any development that's basic level. And so I just want to grab this guy and include it in my file. So if I do this now, and now I can use jQuery. So when you're, and we'll do more of jQuery. This is kind of really just high level. So now that jQuery is hooked up, you can call jQuery by doing a $. So I want to just grab the ID. So just like in CSS, with jQuery, IDs are called by hashtags, and then classes are done by dots. So calc value, and I want to say value is current value. So let's see what that does now. Selected number is not defined. What selected number? So what's the issue? Hold on. Oh, I have an unexpected token. It means there's an error in my file somewhere. Unexpected token It's line 17. So let's get, it might have been the dot. So $ this. Okay, so now there's no error. So I was wrong on the dot. So you can start grabbing any particular thing, and jQuery has an awesome site for documentation. So if you ever want to just dive in to their site, you can always just get some get a good reference. Let's say, oh, that's not what I wanted. API documentation. They have a lot of stuff here as far as how you can get all the references. I want to just update the value with the current value. So value is still not a function. It's val. Sorry, I haven't been in jQuery in quite some time. There we go. So now that I'm doing it, so how this is going to work so far is every time I'm clicking this button, I'm running selected number and passing in the particular number of that button. I'm setting the current value to num, which is way up here, which is a global variable in the sense of I can access it throughout the whole thing. If I had a variable, if I called a variable here of temp equals 7, and I tried to call temp, this would fail. This would actually say temp is undefined. And it's because temp is only local to this variable. If I ran temp inside, or it's only local in the function. If I ran temp in here, since it's inside the same function, there won't be an error. Oh, I didn't save it. See, now it's still working. Temp is always 7. That's why every time I run this, it's still 7.
Yeah.
But if I go through here and I do current value again, then I'm back. Okay. So the next step now is I need to keep making a number. I need to make it bigger. So I want 74 instead of 74. Okay. Now how we can do that is we need a way to track that this isn't in a mode of one of these buttons. So let's say we have an action. We'll just say action false, which a true and a false variable is called a Boolean. So I would say as long as action is false, meaning I'm not trying to do an action like add or subtract or multiply, I will concatenate the number. And if the action is set, then the current value is a new number, or is just going to be overwritten so that we can display it. Okay? So action is false, which means if I ran this, so if equals equals true, and really if I just did this, how the if statement is going to work is if it's true, this will pass. If it's just a false, it'll say, okay, skip to the else. And this is kind of shorthand for Boolean values. So, but if it's a string or an int, you need to set an equals. So if this equals true, and we'll just do it in the same sense. Now keep in mind, now this is one of the most important things to remember for an if statement, is when you're checking to say if this equals this, always put 2 equals or more. Never do 1, because 1 equals is assigning a value to something. Just like we're doing up here, I'm assigning false to action. If you did it here, I'm assigning true to the action variable, which would always pass. This would always be true because I'm assigning it here. Doing 2 equals just says it's comparing. Is action true or is it false? If it is true, then do this. If it's false, then do this. So right now we want to check to see if there's no action. So currently action is false. So the thing that we'll do is, if action is false, we are going to concatenate the number. So we're going to concatenate current value with number. Now, I want to show you something before we go further, because this isn't the right syntax. What this will actually do is add the current value to the number. So if I were to do this, it would do 7, then 12, 14, 18. Now, you'd think, hey, that's kind of what we want for here, but not in this state. We want to try to get 74, not 11. Okay, so the way that we can do this is we actually need 74, or we need 74 to be a string and not a number, if that makes sense. So because when we're adding 2 numbers together, they'll just be 7 plus 4 is 11. When we add a string together, we get this, which is exactly what we want in this scenario. We want it to be 7, 4, not 11. Are you still with me?
Trying.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Is there anything that you need me to back up on?
I think you just have to keep going.
Okay. But you see, with this syntax of current value plus num, all it does is I'm just adding these 2 numbers together. I'm adding 7 plus 4, or 12 plus 15. I want it to be 74. So how I can do this, there's a shorthand in JavaScript to turn something into a string. And it's just doing the quotes here. Okay? That's just saying, oh, instead of I'm actually adding 2 numbers together, I'm treating this whole thing like a string and concatenating them together. So if I do this, 7, 4, hey, look at that. We got our 74, not 11 anymore. And it's just like, what if we turned this into current value of 7, and I'm going to comment out these 2 things, and it's going to be, where did I go? Did I get rid of it? Oh, that's failing because it was saying that this was a error. Like 7 was treated like a variable. When it's a string, it needs to be in quotes. So 7, okay. And when this happens, I need it to be 4. So this is the concatenating syntax. So this should say 74 with no space. So, and that's because this string is just being added together to 4. So we can get that same function of adding 2 words together, and we just treat the numbers like words instead of numbers that do actions. So I can say, oh, sorry, let me get rid of that.
So leaving, like when you just do the quotation marks,
on here?
Like when you do that and you don't fill it in, it just knows that the second value that you pick is.
It's not so much that it knows that it's a string or a number. It's just saying when quotes are involved, it says, oh, I have to treat this whole thing like I'm concatenating strings together. I have to forget about numbers. I'm not even thinking about numbers now. I'm thinking that whatever these values are, they're strings. So
I have a. Oh,
yeah, go for it. What's up?
I wasn't sure if you were done answering Jen's question.
Nope. Well, yes, I was. So you're good.
Okay. So I'm confused with the action that we're talking about. We have if action equals true, else do this other stuff, and it's doing the other stuff. So what is the action that we're telling it? What's the action that's false?
Right here. So we set a variable in the beginning. Do you see what's highlighted?
Yep.
Yeah, so just like current value, I'm setting that as 0. I am setting action to false because right now my calculator doesn't have an action. Like I'm treating addition or subtraction or a multiplication as an action.
Oh, okay. So if we haven't hit one of those buttons, then if that's false, then you should just string the numbers together, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's get adding in. So just to kind of see how this would get treated. So when I click add now, action's going to change from false to true, meaning now we hit this scenario. So we will go and let me just add this real quick. So here's my logic. When I click 74, and this is actually working now, I believe. So when I click 74 and then add, it's telling, okay, there's an action coming. So it'll actually change action to true. So nothing displayed, but I could change, I could say, actually, let's do that just to be a little bit more helpful. So I want the value just to be a plus sign. So when I say 74 plus, okay, so when that action happened, it changed this action to true, so that whenever I do this, whenever I click a number, which means this is getting run, selected number, it's going to say, oh, this is true now. I'm going to change the current value back to just the num, and I'm saying, okay, the action is now ready at least. I'm going to go back into concatenating these numbers. So let's say 89 is my next number. Oh, damn it. What just happened? Let's say, let's debug this, because it should say 89, but now it's doing 17. And I don't quite know why. Because, well, let's debug. So this is one of the best things about console log. So we'll say action true and action false. So 74 adds, and then action true, and it should say action false. So it went back to action false, but it's still doing the addition, which is weird to me. And I'm wondering why. Because current value should be treated as a string in this sense, but it's doing the addition. Let's add this real quick, and we'll say do. Okay, it's still doing the same thing. So let's just throw in what my current value is. Okay, 74. Oop. Let's get rid of that space. Okay, 74 plus 89 and 17. Oh, interesting. So when I keep adding after that first initial one, it's concatenating, but right after it makes the switch, it's doing one addition, which is odd, and then it's concatenating. I wonder why, because that's pretty interesting to me, and honestly I couldn't tell you what's going on. So, oh, you know what? Let's try this. So 74, yeah, there we go. So on this action right here, let's get rid of these consoles because they're totally unnecessary now. What I was doing before was I was saying this number equals the current value. I still kind of want to just treat this all as a string. So I did the concatenation and turned the int into a string. So when it was ready to hit the next scenario, because it turns this into a string, runs the action false, so when it goes again, it applies here and turns this back into a, or it treats it like a string properly. It's odd that it wasn't letting me do that the first time, but sometimes JavaScript's a little wonky. So where we're at right now, we have 74 working. When we hit add, I can say 76, and I'm kind of stuck now. So when I hit equals, I really want to say 74 plus 56 equals so-and-so. So let's figure out how to do that. Now really we need to store two numbers. It's not just the current value, we need to store the current value and like a stored value. The thing that we just forgot, when I hit 74 and then go to 56, what happened to 74? Like, how do I keep that? So I would actually keep a stored value that on add, why don't I just store why don't I say stored value equals current value? So that way I can forget about what current value was and just say, well, let's do, I'm going to do a console log, and just to make sure that I can confirm that stored value is being saved. Okay, so equals 56 equals, yeah, so I saved the original number now. And now I just need to really add the current value to the stored value. And let's see what happens. Is this going to say 7456, or is it going to say 130? That's what I'm curious about. And it says 7456. So now it's concatenating because it thinks both of these are strings. That can be an issue because, like, how do I get back to them being numbers? And I honestly don't know off the top of my head in JavaScript, but there's a thing called casting. Essentially, when I declare that this variable is a number, I'm kind of casting it as a number. I'm saying, hey, you're going to be a number. And right now I'm kind of stuck at a string. So I want to cast these back to being numbers so that I can add them properly. So I'm going to say JavaScript casting, cast to int. Perfect. Parse int. So JavaScript has a function of parse int. So I want to parse in a string, and it's going to output an int for me. So if I do that, this should work. So I'm going to say stored value equals the parsed int. Stored value equals parse int, and I can put in the same thing. I'm just basically saying I want to run this parse in function to output a number, and I want to store it back in the same variable. I don't want to bother with the new variable. And I'm going to do the same thing with current value, but you know what? Since I use current value, why don't I just use temp current value? So I can either cast or put it back into the original variable, or just make a brand new one. And when you make a brand new one, you have to say var. It's like basically telling your browser, hey, get ready to store a new thing of data, and I'm calling it temp current value. So if I did this, now if I did 74 plus 56 equals 130, and that is a beautiful number to me.
What?
Yeah. So we have a calculator. We're starting to get a calculator going. Now if I keep hitting this, it's still going to say 130, which is technically correct. I haven't selected anything else. And you know, that works for me. If I were to actually, I want to do this math and put it back into the current value and run the display function that we already wrote. So I can just say display value come on. And 74, oh, sorry, I have a syntax error. It's because I left that open. So that was an illegal thing, and JavaScript told me in the console that there's an error. There's an unexpected token of the end parentheses. It's because I have that legacy here from that console log. So I went, and now I'm adding the new current value, and I'm just going to tell this function, hey, can you display the current value again? And if all goes well, it should say 130 now.
Magic.
Well, that's JavaScript, and that's programming. And
holy crap.
Now, but here's the thing, I'm always hitting equals now, and it's always doing the addition. So I think the final thing for tonight, just to make sure, like, kind of do the whole well-rounded thing, is what do we actually do? Is actually setting up that addition, because right now it's always adding. I want to be able to capture, hey, I'm doing addition right now, not anything else. I'm going to make a new action type. So this is the action type. Right now it's nothing. Okay. And I'm going to do this thing called a switch statement. It's kind of like a really complicated if, in the sense of I have these. I have this if here, and really, if I said action type equals plus, then add those two together, and that would work. I can actually say on the add and say action type equals plus, which is just a string right now. And I can even reuse that code and say I'm going to set the value to plus. So here, if when I do the add, action type is a plus sign, and whenever I run equals, it'll say, hey, if action type is plus, I'm just going to add these two numbers together. Okay? And I'll do that, and this should still work. Like that. But what happens when I want to subtract, or multiply, or divide? There's all these different scenarios. So I can still run an if statement if I wanted. There's things called an else if or an if else. I think it's if else in JavaScript, and in PHP it's else if. But let's confirm that real quick. So it's a great little site of all of these things. So conditions, so if statements, else if, or like I mentioned earlier, a switch. I can show you a switch real quick, unless they don't show you switches. Oh, that's a bummer, because switches are freaking awesome. But we'll do an if for right now. So else if, and then it's another condition. So else if action type is minus, I'm going to subtract the two. So I'll do else if type minus and just change this to minus. Done. And I will change this function to subtract, which I already set in place. Subtract. So still what I'm doing here, so subtract, I'm going to run this function. It's still true, action's true, but the action type now is minus. I'm going to say, hey, I want the calc value to be action type, and I want to store the value. Pretty much this is the same exact method or function. It's just I'm setting the action type to addition here, and this one to subtraction. But we go here, and I did minus, undefined subtract. So I must not have actually defined, or I misspelled or something. Subtract? No, I didn't misspell. Or I didn't save. That must have been it. Yeah, that's good. Okay, 74 minus 56 equals 18. So we already busted out two of those things.
Ta-da.
Ta-da. Why don't we... Well, I'd say I can spend the next few minutes. Here, we'll do multiplication. I'm actually going to change this to make it even better. So we do an if else, and we change this to multiplication. Then I can say 14 times 6 equals... That's not it.
What?
Well, do you know why?
Because you didn't specify. I don't know.
I did, but there's a reason. So I have action type is X, so that's right, but...
Oh, you didn't change the little thing you were there.
Yep. So this is the operator. The wildcard is for multiplication. So I can say 14 times 5 equals 70. So
it just knows, like, when you put an asterisk in, that it's multiplying?
Yep.
Yeah.
And last but not least, why don't we just do division as well? And pretty much our calculator is going to be done. So if I did that, and we'll add a... Well, I'll tell you what. we're actually going to do something different. So I'm going to make a new function called setAction. Because, and one of the best parts of programming, sometimes it's one of the more tedious, but it's really important, is refactoring. So refactoring mainly just means cleaning up. I see a lot of code that's duplicate, and that I'm doing the exact same thing with, it's just slightly different. How can I make this better? How can I use this once instead of writing it 3 times? So for here, I have literally the same exact lines, except for setting the action type. Now, I could use a similar method of passing in a argument, and I can say action type, and just do this. Oh, I copied the wrong thing. So action type equals action type. Here, that's not actually a very good example. We'll just do type. That would have worked, but it is kind of confusing because that argument is different than the global one. So it would have worked, but we'll just clean it up and set that to true. So I can actually get rid of all of these now. And what I'll do is change this and this and this and this, and just pass in divide. Oh, it's important when you're doing JavaScript that your quotes match up. So I had to do a single quote instead of a double quote because that breaks this since I'm wrapping double quotes around. So single quote still. Okay, and we are almost done. And let's see if that works. So I'm going to do 74 plus 56, 130. And I have this all going from one action now. So I can do a new one of 18 divided by 6 equals 3. So we have a fully functioning calculator now. And we have a functioning calculator in less than 60 lines of code.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so, with this lesson, you got to kind of see the power of JavaScript or any programming language, really. Like, all programming languages can do this. This is honestly kind of a basic version of that, just to kind of see how like the logic and the brain of a language can work. And we have some good examples of an if-else statement. We have some variables here, some ints, some strings. We have a Boolean value. This, honestly, I would tighten up. And I can show you what a switch is. I'm not going to write it fully, but basically what a switch is you can set up cases. So like, I'm going to pass in action type. And when action type is under this case of equaling plus sign, I'm going to do a certain block of code. And then I'm going to break that case in the sense of, and here. So when it's a case of a plus sign, I'm going to just do this. When it's a case of a minus, I'm going to do this. When it's a case of multiplication, I'm going to do this. And when it's division, I'm going to do this. And that got rid of all that code. And it's a little bit more organized, and you don't have to write some really crazy conditions, because I'm just saying when it's this value, do this. When it's this value, do that. And that switch statement still works, unless I wrote it wrong, which I don't use JavaScript all the time, but looks like our function still works. Now there's our calculator still works. Now there's some things that I'm going to commit this file, and there's still some flaws to it that I can see. When I hit 0, all these zeros are around. So maybe we need some logic to say, oh, if the current value is 0, don't do anything, because a bunch of zeros is a bunch of garbage, honestly. Another one is, and I don't know if this already works, but when I hit plus sign and plus 56, but I keep wanting to add it, what happens? Did I lose anything? Let's see. Yeah, that's goofy, because essentially what it did was it went and stored 74, and on 56 it just stored 56. And forgot about 74, so now it's 66. Where did the 74 go? So if basically a good way to think about it is, do we run the equals function, which we already have in place, instead of actually, I'll leave that to you guys. Go ahead and play around with it. Break it if you want. Failure is really important, or when you're programming, breaking things is actually, to me, more important than getting it right the first time. So I'm going to give you this application, and it's 2 files I'll commit, and I'll do that right now. And have some fun with it. Maybe even think about doing decimals if you wanted. That's maybe a little heavy, and I would not expect you to, but you can always turn this equal sign into 2 buttons and do a dot equals and work in decimals. That's definitely kind of higher level stuff, but again, you're more than welcome to. So I'm actually going to CP Scotty and turn this into calc PHP, and that's what I'll commit, because Scotty doesn't really make sense. And I will svn add calc, and you can add multiple things. So I can just say add $, and it's going to add both. So if they have the same name, you can just do not $, the wildcard, which is any character. Svn commit calculator calc lesson. All right, but that is the end of our lesson tonight. It was really heavy on JavaScript, and believe me, it's gonna the application programming, like the stuff of getting logic in, it's not an overnight thing. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I felt only even the last few years have I gotten really good at it, or gotten to the point where I'm very happy with my level, but I still want to keep getting better. So don't get mad at yourself. I know it'll be hard not to sometimes, because especially with JavaScript, because it sucks. But just play around with it, break it. It's in SVN now, so if it's totally ruined, you can always delete your file, run an SVN up, and you're good to go. But have some fun with it. See if you can kind of get rid of some of those bugs. Like that 0 thing is definitely a bug. Having multiple actions, like correcting that is a big one. So, and maybe instead of doing the 74 and then dropping that, like figuring out a way to still display 74. those are some other things that could be done. So that is it for tonight. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. Or we can talk about it tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I know. It's really heavy. But do you feel like it wasn't time lost? Was it like okay? Or was this like way too early to get that heavy into JavaScript?
No, I feel like I understand the logic better.
That's good.
But I need to.
I need to do some stuff with it.
Yeah, need to like mess around with it.
Yeah, by all means. We actually got a lot farther than I thought today. I think I kind of got a little lucky on some of the stuff because I was kind of spitballing a lot of it or shooting off the hip. But sometimes that just happens where you hit the right functions at the right time, or sometimes you're just going down completely the wrong track. So, anyways, you girls have a good night.
All right, you too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.